How did COOLERMASTER screw this up so badly? This is the MM731 and on paper, it had the potential to be a really revolutionary wireless gaming mouse. It had so many impressive specs for a very impressive price. But if you go over to r/mouse review, which is arguably one of the best platforms to look for mouse reviews, you will see Reddit post after Reddit post after Reddit post of people complaining about different issues with this mice. Input lag issues, firmware issues, glitches, bugs, it's all there. So from a schmuck who actually went out there and bought this mouse because it was so hyped, let's find out how many of these issues are true, how many of those issues are problematic, and let's find out, well, should you still consider this mouse? Now, I want to start off this by prefacing and pre-saying this, that this is not an in-depth review. I'm going to give COOLERMASTER a month or so to do software updates and firmware updates, and hopefully by then, a lot of the issues will be fixed. But let's just try to cover and break down the issues that it currently has, and then when we do the full-on in-depth review, we can come back to this video and revisit and see whether COOLERMASTER was able to fix a lot of these glaring issues. I think the biggest frustration with this gaming mouse stems from the wasted potential that this mouse has. I mean, if you look at this mouse, it really is quite impressive on paper. It's got a nice shape, nice clicks, a 3389 sensor, it's wireless, and it supports Bluetooth. And it comes in at a very impressive price of about $80 to $100 depending on the currency, 80 USD or 100 Singapore dollars MSRP. At that price, it's really impressive and has the potential to kill the G Pro Superlight or the Viper Ultimate in terms of straight up value, especially since it's also so damn light. So what are the issues? Are they deal breakers? Let's try to break them down. Let's try to get into it. Number one, the biggest issue with this mouse that people have reported is the motion delay or the input lag. Now, many reviewers have said that the slightly higher motion delay of this mouse is not noticeable, but the difference between this mouse and like the G Pro Superlight or the Viper Ultimate is close to 10 plus milliseconds. This has a motion delay reportedly of about 20 milliseconds, while the G Pro Superlight has less than 10. And for the average casual gamer who's just chilling, it is not going to be an issue. You are not going to notice this increased motion delay in your desktop, in your slow-paced game, in your non-precision, non-reaction required kind of game. But for people who are playing with high concentration, high focus at a high competitive level, trying to get every single millisecond of advantage over their opponents, that is going to be noticeable. Now, I'm not very good, so this kind of 10 milliseconds extra delay is not going to suddenly make me a much worse player because I'm not that good to begin with. But I can notice it when I'm playing with high levels of concentration. And since the only game I ever play is Valorant and on 280 Hz display with like 300, 400, 500 FPS, I can confidently say that I can notice the difference between this and a wired Endgame Gear XM1 in terms of motion delay. Of course, if you are below Plat 3 in terms of your skill level, you are not going to really play worse with this slight motion delay. But if you're playing on Radiant, if you're playing with really hyper focus, a lot of concentration, and every single bit of advantage counts, it is going to matter. And with so many people on Reddit saying that this has disappointed them in terms of like the difference in performance between it and its competitors, I think it's not fair to just dismiss these people who say, oh, they can notice this difference in motion delay, because, well, you have to be a really good gamer to know what really good gamers feel. And, well, the amount of difference between this and the G Pro Superlights and the Viper Ultimates of the world is substantial enough to matter, in my opinion. So is it a deal breaker? It depends on who you are and how good of a gamer you are, but it's definitely an issue that matters. However, let's cross our fingers and hope that COOLERMASTER can fix this with some sort of firmware or software update down the line, because I really would hope this mouse fulfills its full potential and becomes the absolute king killer that it can be. And let's just hope that COOLERMASTER can fix this lag issue with some firmware and software updates, and it's not some issue that's substantially built in to the hardware. If that's the case, then, well, this mouse will, to be honest, be a disappointment. Now, the next issue that we have with this mouse, since we're on the topic of firmware, is its firmware updates. The firmware update of this mouse is absolutely shambolic. Number one, it is very long, like it takes forever to update just a simple mouse. And number two, you need to have both the wire, the USB-C wire and the wireless dongle plugged in, because you need to firmware update both the dongle and the mouse itself. If not, suddenly your wireless mode will stop working. For some reason, this mouse has both the wired and wireless firmwares kind of separate. So what you need to do when you update the firmware of this mouse is you plug this in with USB-C, plug the dongle into the PC, switch it into wireless mode and update it in wireless mode while while it's still plugged in via USB-C. It's just such a hassle, such a kerfuffle, such a mess that why wasn't this fixed before it was released in the first place? Now, after you've done this firmware update, a lot of this kind of software, firmware glitches are fixed. For those people who didn't go on Reddit and look up all this information, they might just screw things up and end up with a mouse that suddenly stopped working with its wireless dongle because the firmware version of the mouse and the wireless dongle is different. Like, oh my goodness. And also, before you do this firmware update, your mouse is unable to be recognized in COOLERMASTER's Master Plus software if you only have the dongle plugged in. No matter what I tried, I was not able to change the wireless profiles of this mouse until I plugged both the wireless dongle in and the USB-C cable in. So I had to run it in both wired and wireless mode for some reason to switch the setting. Now, apparently, after you fix and update the firmware 2.0.7, you don't have this issue and you can just change your profile settings even without that USB-C cable plugged in. You know, you can just do it wirelessly. You don't have to plug in a cable just to change profile settings. But this is the kind of issue that should be fixed before a mouse or product gets released, because it could cause a lot of confusion, it could cause a lot of issues, it could cause a lot of problems for people who are buying this mouse, especially people who might be less tech savvy or people who just don't want to do the research. And with that, that leads us to our final conclusion. Should you buy the MM731 or should you wait and hold off? Now, the MM731 without doubt has a lot of potential to be really, really good. And I will reserve my final judgment of whether it's a buy or a not buy in my full-on in-depth review coming in a month or so. However, I would absolutely say wait for a month plus to see how this mouse develops, how the firmware and software around this mouse progresses before making a purchase decision. Because while the motion delay issue might not be a big problem for most casual gamers, it definitely won't be a problem for a casual gamer. I think the software and firmware bugs that might end up with the mouse being unable to be used wirelessly, yes, it exists, it's a firmware issue, it's a terrible firmware issue, and can only be fixed with some solution that you have to go and find on Reddit. All this software and firmware things will cause you unnecessary trouble and stress that you don't want to deal with. So I would absolutely say wait for a month or two, wait for my full-on in-depth review, and wait to see what COOLERMASTER does with the software and the firmware of this mouse before making a purchase decision. Because if they get it right, and if they fix it, and I'm rooting for them to do it because this mouse has a lot of potential, if COOLERMASTER can get the firmware right and fix the issues on this mouse with firmware, it will absolutely be a very impressive and good option for people looking for a wireless mouse. But if they can't fix it and it continues to be a glitchy, buggy mess with a bunch of unnecessary lag, even in a month or two down the road, whenever my full review comes out of it, well, then it would be a bad choice to buy it now. So with that, I'm going to end this video off here. I hope that was pretty helpful to you guys. I wanted to make this video quick because I got this mouse yesterday and I was digging through Reddit today and I realized how much of an absolute cesspool this mouse was released into. So fingers crossed, hopefully COOLERMASTER gets it right, and well, I'm rooting for you, COOLERMASTER. Show me what you can do, and I'm going to end the video off here. I hope you guys are rooting for me too, and if you want to root for me, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you share my videos or whatever. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Oh, follow me on Instagram. Giveaway coming soon.